The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is Katie Stokes, and she's here to talk to us about her beautiful adoption journey and how it led her to a profound healing journey. Let's welcome Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you here. This is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes. I already know it.
Oh,
Well, I love all the healing stuff. And before we were talking about adoption and how you said it was always laid on your heart, and it's something it's been on mine too. We haven't gone that route, and my husband's going to listen and be like, "Oh my dear Lord, Andrea, no." But I mean, it's something we've talked about. He knows we've talked about it, but it's a beautiful gift that not everyone can give. So let's start with the adoption. You were sharing with me before how it was something you just knew from a young age you wanted to do.
I did. Yeah. I remember, I think the first time I told someone I wanted to adopt, I was probably sixth or seventh grade. And I can't even tell you like why I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I just always had so much love for kids. And I don't know, it just came easy to me. Like the biology piece, matching genes wasn't important to me. I just knew there was kids out there that needed families, and that was the route we decided to go.
I think for me, I've always felt called to it because I look at the life that I had and it was a blessed life. And I think about all these kids that don't have that. And it's like, well, gosh, like, how could I not offer that to another kid out in this world? Like that, it's really hard to sit with that. But I have my hands full at the moment with my own kids. But it's a hard thing when you look at what you could offer somebody and knowing that there's kids that really need it. And if you're open to it, then I think it's such a beautiful thing to do. So I'm sure as a kid, you probably appreciated your life and saw that others struggled so much in life and thought, well, gosh, like, what if I could put you in a similar home that I've had growing up?
Yeah, and the first job I had out of college, I was working at a community center. And I remember there was this one boy named Adan, and he would come, like, looking back, like, I feel like his family, this was years and years ago now, but his family, I could just, like, his parents were not very supportive. Like, when I would watch them interact with him, he
Mhm.
didn't get the kind of nurturing he needed. And so I made him my little helper there. And I just remember thinking, like, looking at him and thinking, like, I wish I could just take this kid. He had a family. I wasn't trying to steal anyone's kid, but like, I would love to be able to give kids who don't have the nurturing and the love from their parents, like, do that for another kid. Like, to me, that just would have that comes so easy to do that for kids. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to adoption time. You go through all the difficulties of the paperwork and all the things, and go ahead and share what happens.
Yeah. So initially we decided we were going to adopt, and it was a question of then, do we adopt a healthy infant here in the United States? Do we go abroad, foster care? We looked at all of the different options and ultimately decided that we wanted to adopt from China. And we ended up adopting our son in 2010. So we traveled to China to adopt him in 2010. And then a year and a half later, we traveled back to China to adopt our daughter. And
Mhm.
she was 33 months old at the time of adoption. And she had spent almost 2 years in an orphanage. And if I describe it, it'll make me cry because when we went back to visit the orphanage, we were in the room where she had been, and there's babies, and not like tiny little infants, but 1 year old, 18-month olds. And you walk in the room and the babies are catatonic. Like no one's stirring. None of the kids are sitting up. No one's trying to interact with you. And I just looked at what is the level of neglect that must be happening for the babies to just be completely, like I said, catatonic.
Yeah,
And
so that reminds me of when I was in college and I studied education. But when I was in college, I remember reading this book and we were learning about the critical period hypothesis. And they were talking about, I don't know if you read about this one, but they did a study on an orphanage and it was awful. But the study was to not speak to these children, these babies. It was like, these babies are going to be born. Here's the study. We're not going to speak to them. We want to see what language they speak without never being spoken to, which is so weird, but I don't know how you'd expect anything, but okay. So the babies were all not spoken to and they all died.
oh, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it just was this remarkable story on how valuable language is. A lot of people don't understand the criticalness of the spoken word and the nurturing that babies really need. They need so much more than to be held and they need to be spoken to. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
can imagine there's such a lack of touch and even verbal cues when they're in the orphanages like that. Oh, breaks my heart.
Yeah, it was really sad, and I'm really grateful because for the year before we adopted her for 12 months, she was with a foster family, so I'm sure that helped
Okay.
tremendously to get her speaking and potty trained and all that stuff before we then stepped into the picture when she was 33 months old. But yes, everything you said about the neglect and the emotional scars that leaves. There's so much research. Like I remember out of the 80s, it was the research on the orphanages in Romania where those kids were just completely neglected. And so many of them looked like they had autism or things like that.
Yeah.
Just from the neglect. So
Mhm.
that early nurturing and speaking to children and loving on them and touch is so critical.
It is. It is. Yeah, that wiring that happens within the brains at such an early age is crucial.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens after you adopt her?
So we adopted her when she was 33 months. After 2 weeks in China, we came back to the United States. And it was really clear early on that something was just like a little different about her, the way she just kind of moved about the world.
Mhm.
And just as a very basic example, she just at 33 months old, she really didn't know how to play. She didn't know
Mhm.
what to do with a puzzle. She didn't know what to do with crayons. She didn't know how to paint. The one thing that she did know how to do was she could pretend to cook food and she could pretend to do laundry. And I think she probably saw her foster mom doing a lot of that. So that was really the only play she kind of knew how to do. And so there was just a lot of things that were kind of off. But at the time, I just thought, I'm going to give her the most loving and nurturing environment that I possibly can. And of course, I'm sure that she's going to be fine, a year from now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that really wasn't the case. So we were told she had some minor health stuff, but that was not a big deal. But it was really, it was just, again, it was just like the way she kind of moved about the world. And I think the one thing I eventually came to understand, which is what you just alluded to a moment ago, was that the early nurturing, like the way it wires the brain is so crucial. And kids who
Mhm.
don't get that, the brain wiring doesn't lay down the way that it's supposed to. And
Right.
I will say the other piece I think was a really big factor for her when we adopted her, it was really clear in a lot of different ways that she was dealing with tremendous toxicity within her body. So we ended up realizing it was heavy metal toxicity. She ended up with some mold toxicity. So there was a lot going on that
Mhm.
didn't allow her brain to function the way that you would expect it to function.
Okay.
So by the time she'd been home for a year, so she's about to turn 4, and I'm realizing that everything I'm pouring into this is not getting the results that we would want.
Mhm.
And just for a little bit of background, like I was finishing up my PhD in child development at Stanford at the time. So it's not like I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
right? At this time, I remember it was a very challenging time for me because I was just watching her fall further and further and behind. I can remember like feeling embarrassed for, like, people to meet her because her behavior was still kind of very disorganized and kind of weird and not expected, and I just felt like people were gonna judge her, they were gonna judge me.
Mhm.
I had tremendous fear over sending her to school or,
Yeah.
like, just thinking I mean, she had no short-term memory, her balance was so off kilter, she was falling and injuring herself all the time. I remember thinking someone was gonna call CPS on me because this girl was constantly getting injured.
Oh.
So many strange things. Like, I remember we would say, "Oh, go get your toy, it's there," and I'd point to her bed, and she'd go behind the door, like for the toy. She could not figure out where I was pointing for things.
Oh.
So just so many challenges. And I took her to the pediatrician. I took her to the learning disability specialist. I took her to the neuropsychologist. I was taking her to everyone I knew to try to help me figure out like what is going on with my daughter. And there was so much love there in my heart for her and so much fear about like how is this girl ever going to grow up to be a functioning adult? I couldn't see it. And it was very, very challenging.
Mhm.
And through, I guess, a series of like fortunate events, I ended up finding this guy who did a type of brain integration practice. And when I contacted him, I'm initially just thinking, I just want to get some information. And it turned out he had worked on like dozens of adopted kids. So
Mhm.
right there, like I felt really good about that. And he was sharing some of the results he'd been getting. And he lived about 2.5 hours from us. And
Good.
so I was just like all in. I was like, we have to do something. Like,
Yeah.
and for some reason, I've never really been someone who follows the mainstream, whether that's mainstream medicine or mainstream education. We've done a lot of alternative medicine. We homeschooled. So anyway, this just I don't know, I just knew this felt like the right path. So we ended up going to spend a weekend with this man and he worked on her. So he spent 3 hours with her Friday evening. He spent 3 hours with her Saturday morning, and then we went out to lunch, a little break. And let me tell you, before we had met him, my daughter could not hold a thread in a conversation at all.
Mhm.
He would say, "The sun is shining. The Giants won the World Series. I'm going to have pizza." Like she was very verbal, but there was no thread. It was just constantly like a different topic every
Mhm.
word.
Squirrel.
Yeah, very much, very much.
Mhm.
And by this point, we went out to lunch and he had done 6 hours of work on her. And a lot of the work is focused on brain integration, a focus, that kind of thing. We went out to lunch, and that was the first time I had ever had a conversation with my daughter where she could hold a thread in the conversation.
Okay.
So I knew then already something really profound was already happening, and we were not even halfway through the procedure yet. I
Mhm.
was really that was just so beautiful, and so from there, we finished up the brain integration work with this man, and then seeing what he did for her and hearing what else he could do, I brought my son, I brought myself, like, we all went through the process, and it was just like miracles, miracles, miracles,
Mhm.
and I tell this story so before we had done the brain integration, I had taken her to the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, one of, like, the best aquariums in the country, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
She could care less. Like, she just didn't show any interest whatsoever about anything that we were seeing that day.
Mhm.
Well, so at the time, I remember just thinking, "Okay, I guess she doesn't like fish," right? Like, so then she does the brain integration, and I took her back to the Monterey Bay Aquarium a couple months later, and she loved it. She was engaged with everything. She just had the best time, just, smiling, making comments, and I started crying there at the aquarium because I was so upset with myself for having judged her as like being stupid or as not liking fish or whatever it was. I was a story for what was going on
Mhm.
rather than understanding that her brain just had not been wired the way that it needed to be wired. Because
Mhm.
once we got it wired, she was engaged just like any other kid would have been.
Yeah.
And so I cried. I cried at like being upset for how I judged myself. And I cried because well, out of joy too, just joy to know that now she was, like, so much more, like, normal and functional and could enjoy the things that all the other kids would enjoy as well.
Well, yeah, and you're seeing the life you thought she was gonna live is gone, like, it's no longer there's so many more opportunities now, so I can imagine being just elated because you're seeing such a different future than you ever saw before for her.
Absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. It lifted so much stress off of me to realize that she was gonna be a functional human being and she was gonna be fine. But the stress of that, like, first year, year and a half was so strong for me that it took me several years before I could tell this story without crying, going back to that place of all the fear that I had been holding on to about what her future was gonna be. But thankfully, I don't carry that anymore.
Yay. So people are listening and they're thinking, "Okay, but what? I don't get it. Like, what did this man do?" I'm sure that's exactly what people are thinking. I know what this man did, but I know other people are thinking, "What did this man do to her?"
Yeah, I did not know going into this work with him that what he did was a type of energy work.
Okay.
I had no idea, but it really was, and it uses a combination of kinesiology, which some people call muscle testing. It's
Okay.
also using the meridian points that you find in Chinese medicine, for example. And
Okay.
then there's a protocol of 80 something steps to look at all the different ways that the brain is wired and is connected. So we're looking at what's going on in each of the different hemispheres. We're looking at how the brain is interpreting visual information, smell information, hearing information, touch information. I
Mhm.
think there's one other sense I'm missing there. And then looking at stuff related to balance and coordination. He would sometimes have her do tests in the office. He would read a span of digits and then have her see if she could repeat the digits back.
Mhm.
Or he would have her do marching exercises to see if she could march or stand on one foot kind of thing. And what he's doing during that time is gathering, I'm going to call
Yeah.
it finding where the glitches are. And so every one of those glitches, I know you work with energy, so everything is energy. So he's capturing where the energy of those glitches and then creating a circuit where we're gathering all the information related to everything that's not working as it should. And then ultimately he's putting one hand on the back of her head, one hand here,
Mhm.
and we're just waiting a few minutes until he feels the energy balance. And then she gets up and things look a lot better. Suddenly she was maybe doing 2 digits and now she can repeat back 5 digits kind of thing. So
Mhm.
just really amazing changes in a really short span of time.
Okay. And so this was your great awakening though, right?
It was, it was. I remember after working with him, I was actually kind of angry that this was the first I was hearing about this stuff. I was like, how come we did not learn in school that
It's so hard though, right, Katie? It's so hard for people to believe in things that they cannot see.
yeah,
But everybody's gotta be able to own the fact that there's a lot of things that happen around us that we cannot see. Just
yeah.
my phone connecting to your phone or, just Wi-Fi alone, right? Like, we can all admit that Wi-Fi works, but we can't see it. There's no cord connecting my phone to your phone, but yet I'm able to call you through it's energy, right? It's
Yes.
a energy that's transmuted through the air. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so don't listen to me on that, but um, I always struggle to find the most simple way to explain it to the people that don't believe it.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm kind of like, it's not my job to convince anyone. Like the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
After we got such amazing results with my daughter, we took my son. My son had been born in China with clubfoot, and they had done a little surgery on his Achilles tendons.
Okay.
And when we got back to the US, we had corrected the clubfoot, and he had been in physical therapy by this point for a year and could not go up even half an inch on his tippy toes. So you know how kids should be able to go up on their tippy toes, right?
Right.
He couldn't
Mhm.
even get half an inch. I
Wow.
took him to this guy who did his magic for about 2 hours, just really reactivating all of the tendons and ligaments and muscles and stuff that had been, he would just say had been turned off,
Mhm.
probably due to the surgery, maybe due to other traumas, I don't know. My son gets off the table after 2 hours and he's going up 2 inches on his tippy toes, something that we have not done in a year of physical therapy.
Katie, do you share who this man is, or is that a no-go?
Unfortunately, I don't think he's practicing anymore. Like I had actually tried to refer someone to him a couple of years ago and his website was down. He wasn't answering his phone. So I don't know what happened to this particular man, but there are other people around the country doing this work. So,
Yes. Yes, and Dr. Erin that was on my show a while back, she does this kind of work.
okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a chiropractor, but yes, she does energy work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like just the most beautiful thing. And when I just realized like the miracles, I remember thinking that I was going to be realistic with my daughter, that I remember thinking there was not going to be a silver bullet. We were just going to do therapies and whatever.
Mhm.
And then we worked with this man, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, literally was a silver bullet for her." I'm not gonna say it fixed we all have problems, right? Like,
Right.
there was so much improvement, I couldn't even believe it myself kind of thing. It was just so incredible what it did for her. And at one point, I had talked to the guy, and I said, "I don't wanna have to drive 2.5 hours every time we wanna do some of this work." And
Yeah.
so I had asked him I just said, "How can I learn to do this?" And
Mhm.
his recommendation at the time was to go learn Reiki.
Mhm.
So that's where I started. I went to learn Reiki. There was a guy who lived 5 minutes from my house, and I studied with him, and this particular Reiki master had also learned a number of other modalities over the years. So then I just started learning other things with this guy, and over time just developed my skills and then have studied with other people. But it was just really rooted in just seeing miracles and watching my kids change before my eyes and just thinking it's not okay that people don't know that this exists, that this amazing tool was just life changing. And it didn't take years and years for us to get results. It literally
Right.
happened in about 20 hours over 2 weekends.
Mhm. Yeah, it's wild how rapidly it can happen. I will say when people do it for the first time, and even myself. So back when I was in Minnesota a week or 2 ago, whenever that was, I think a couple weeks ago, I went and saw Doctor Erin there. My hip was hurting, and so I went in, she did all the things. And she's like, "How do you feel?" And I was like, "Well, I don't feel anything right now." But I know that's how it is, right? Like it causes these changes that you won't notice until you step into it, kind of like your son, right? You wouldn't have known that he could raise his heels 2 inches until he tried.
Yeah.
And so if you ask somebody, "How are you feeling?" immediately after, it's like, "Well, I don't know. I feel the same," until you start walking through life. And
Yes.
I definitely noticed after the work with Aaron, there's certain things where I told my husband, I was like, "I feel so much more agreeable." There's just like, I don't know, there's things that just kinda, okay. Like, I take things in a little more lightly since doing the work, but it's one of those things people can't expect to necessarily see it instantaneously. You can if you step into it, but like I said, it's these moments that you gotta walk through, and then you realize, "Oh, something is different about me."
Mhm. The other thing, maybe you've noticed this too, is I find we humans are wired to notice problems more than wired to notice when things are going right.
Right?
So sometimes you can get rid of a problem for a client, whether that's, they had a runny nose or they had a hip pain. And you might follow up with them 2 weeks later and say, "What's different?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know." But until you ask them, "What about that hip pain you had?" And they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you're right. Like I haven't had that in a couple weeks," because they
Yeah.
just haven't noticed the lack of the problem.
Mhm. For sure. Which is good, right? It's
Yes.
like, yeah. So, but share what you were sharing before we started filming when you were talking about this becoming part of your journey and part of your path, and like how this adoption led to your awakening and how it really feels divinely meant to be part of your life's purpose.
Sure. So as I was sharing, I always knew I was meant to adopt. And when we were looking to adopt our second kid, the funny thing is her picture ended up on the adoption agency's website because for whatever reason she was considered a harder to place kid. And when I first saw her picture, there was just something that like drew me to her. And there was a million reasons why I should have said no. And I just kept coming back to her and coming back to her. And at first I just asked for a little bit of information, but I didn't want all of it because I didn't want to get too attached. And like I said, it was like divinely fated, I think, because there was a lot of reasons to have said no. And I couldn't. I just knew that she was meant to be my daughter.
Mhm.
And I didn't know this in the same way at the same time because I was not on a sort of a spiritual path at the time that we adopted her. But
Mhm.
I really understand that she and I had a soul contract to come and do this life together. She was here to get me on that spiritual path. I was here to help her with certain things that she is working on in this lifetime as well. And so because I wasn't involved with energy, I mean, I guess I was seeing a chiropractor. I had done some homeopathy, but that was kind of the extent of like my energy work before. Because of the severity of her challenges, it's what got me into the office of that guy doing this energy work, brain integration stuff with her.
Mhm.
And that's what then got me to start studying energy work. And, I did not grow up religious at all. I grew up atheist basically.
Okay.
Now I'm deeply spiritual and deeply a believer that there is something bigger than me. But
Mhm.
for me, it did not come through religion. It came through energy work and starting with Reiki and just seeing that like my hands could get hot and people could feel a difference and people would feel better after that. So
Mhm.
that was what really started to connect me to this idea that there really was something, a force greater than me on this planet
Right.
or in the universe, not just on this planet, right? In the
Mhm.
cosmos. So
Okay.
and I've just continued on that spiritual path, like learning more about energy work, really studying a lot about different healers, about quantum physics, some of the great spiritual teachers, got into meditation and just really connecting with the divine to the point now where I understand that my first priority is my connection with the divine. And so
Mhm.
that's something I cultivate every single day. But really, it would not have happened without her. And I think the other thing I was sharing with you was that she came in with just the purest heart of gold kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like from a very, very early age, even like as at 3, 4 years old, if she talks on the phone with her grandma or whatever, it's always like, "How are you, grandma?" My other kid talks about himself, which is very like developmentally appropriate.
Yeah.
She is always the kind of person to just like, "How are
I
you
love
doing?"
so.
Or, "How did you sleep last night, mom?" Or just really and just the most beautiful, beautiful heart on that girl. And that of course, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of love, but this was a different quality of love and a different
Mhm.
quality of openness that I had not experienced before. And through her, I have also learned to open my heart more and to
Mhm.
be more loving and more unconditionally loving, especially.
So, what can you say to people that are trying to wake up their soul and trying to find themselves and their soul purpose and their mission in life? Because clearly, through other stories I've shared and your story, everything you've gone through leads you there.
Yeah.
But how do people, or how did you, because this is what I like to share is, each guest's individual experience with it, because I can share my experience, but that doesn't mean it's right for everybody else. And so your experience might be right for a certain number of other people. And so I think it's really important that people share how they came to this realization and connecting the pieces of getting onto this like soul purpose, this whole mission. How did you really connect the dots and realize like, wow, this is all entangled together and this was why I'm here and how I need to push forward with this? Because you didn't stop with taking your daughter to that man. You've continued to learn the tool yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an interesting question, and in some ways, I feel like it only kind of makes sense as I look back. Didn't realize it necessarily along the way.
This is where it's so valuable for people like you to share it now so that people can start that reflection process rather than having to wait until they get all the way through it. Like people try to figure things out and I say, "Well, look at what you've been through. What have you been through? What can you do with all of that?" Because I promise you, you haven't been through all of this hardship for nothing. And so think about all those difficult things and what are the similarities too? Because usually across the board, somebody's life is made up of multiple hardships, but there's some sort of synchronicity with all of those. And so I think that's the connection people need to make.
That's beautiful. I don't know if I even know for sure how to answer that question. It was always just like, what is the next right step in this journey? And
Mhm.
anything that had to do with healing for me, energy work and healing always felt like the next right step. Anything having to do with learning to live my life with a more open heart and to be less judgmental and more loving, unconditionally loving, especially, has felt like the next right step.
Mhm.
And learning, I'm going to share something. I don't know that it makes me look very good, but it's part of my truth. Like when one of my biggest fears when deciding to adopt was like, I didn't want to adopt a stupid kid. And that sounds horrible to say that. I can say that now because I can look back and just see how limited I was in terms of my understanding of the value of a human being at the time and that we're so much more than what we can do for others or our intelligence or whatever.
Mhm.
And then I adopted a kid who, from all the metrics would have looked not very smart at all because of all the challenges she was dealing with. And that would have robbed me from seeing like the beauty of who she was. I actually feel like so blessed because it kind of was a slap in the face to say, hey, that is not what the value of a human being is. It's not about their intelligence or their grades or anything like that. It was really about seeing the heart and the beauty that she brought into this world. And that being said, now that her brain is integrated, intellectually, she's great. She's great. But I couldn't see that at first, but I can still see her humanity and her value. And I loved her with all of my heart, even if she was going to struggle with academic stuff, for example.
Mhm.
So it was really a wake up call to understand how do I want to put we are human beings, not human doings. We are here to be. We all have a purpose here. We all bring a vibration to this planet. We all have lessons to learn.
Mhm.
I just feel like I'm so much more open and it's so much easier for me to see the beauty in everyone and even people who are struggling in other ways or maybe committing crimes against other people. I don't condone that, but I can see the humanity in that and understand that there is like a journey for that person's soul as well. And so it just really adopting her made me a better person because I had to get out of some of my own limiting understandings and beliefs about what made somebody valuable and really expand that. And she was a catalyst for that.
Yeah, I can see where this is part of your mission, though, is helping people see their value and also helping parents to see their children's value. Because what you're saying, I don't think you're alone in that, thinking, oh, what if my kid is this or that? And I mean, I haven't thought the same thought per se, but with my own kids, when I see them struggling, I have concerns and I worry about their intelligence. And only to the degree of, are they gonna be able to function in this world like they need to be, or are they gonna be made fun of because they can't do this or that? And so it comes from this place of caring about them and wanting the best, and also we just know this world can be really rough and tough, and you don't want your kid to be humiliated for not being the best. I get it. It's a really hard thing to admit, I'm sure, for you to say that you thought that. But I think a lot of parents have thought that. What if my kid is this or that and they're not enough in this area and in all areas, there's
Yeah.
so many different ways they can underperform in life. And I don't even think that's fair to say underperforming because I think we all are meeting our potential at the best we can. And we just have to meet everybody where they're at and with love and grace and kindness.
For sure. And then underperforming by whose standards? Like the school
Yeah.
standards? Maybe. But like by the standards in terms of the lessons they came to this planet to learn, maybe
Yeah.
they're exactly where they need to be and
Yeah.
undergoing the exact challenges that they need to be undergoing.
And they're gonna accomplish whatever their life mission is. Like, my youngest, she's not even of school age yet, but, I mean, she goes to preschool, but she is wicked smart, like, wicked smart. I'm not saying my oldest isn't, but we're just in this stage of she's 3, and the things that she can conceptualize are astonishing. And I've already set my own belief to, you know what? I don't even care what grades she gets in school because I know, like, the wheels are turning on such a deep level that like, I just know she's gonna be just fine. So if for whatever reason she's bombing out of school, I don't know, I can't explain it, but I'm not worried about her. I know she can think and process in a deep, meaningful way, and so I'm not worried about her. Like, so whatever, like, she can get all Fs if she wants, but she better not listen to this episode.
Edit that part out.
Yeah. Mm. So, do you have any favorite books that you've read?
Oh, so many.
Okay.
At some point, I thought I should compile like a top 10 list. And what's funny is some of them that were my favorite at the time I read them may or may not be my favorite now, but they were what I needed to read at that time.
Mhm.
And I think one of the first books that was really impactful for me was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. That was very impactful for me.
Mhm.
I also love the work Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton was a great one
Yes.
as well for the understanding of our perception is what really creates our reality.
Mhm.
I
That was
love
one of my favorite it seems ridiculous now, but that was, like, such a profound thing for me to understand. This was years ago when I was in therapy, but really understanding that I am creating my own reality, whatever I believe, and I can attach, like and I remember explaining this to people, and I remember someone being like, "Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?" And I'm like, "No, it's real." Like, it's a real thing that you can truly decide how you're going to feel about something. Somebody could slap you across the face and you can truly decide, are you gonna be mad about it or are you just gonna be like, I guess they're having a bad day and walk away? I mean, you really can. It's wild when you start to understand that because I think some people live in such a little bubble of their emotions where they think and feel a certain way and don't understand that there's other options.
Yeah, for sure. That reminds me, about a year ago, I was visiting family in Mexico, and somebody very dear to me who I've known since he was born, basically, he's a young adult now. He ended up stealing a bunch, like about $500 from me. And at the time, I mean, not that I was happy about it, but I was just like, I'm going to let that go. Like maybe he needed that money more than I did or whatever. And the other family members were really upset with him and it felt really bad. And I just was like, look, I'm not here for very long. I don't want to ruin it being upset with this. It is what it is. There's a lesson here for maybe I needed to lose that money for some reason. Maybe it's going to come back to me in some other way.
Maybe your reaction is something that he needed to see.
Perhaps so. Perhaps so. And it was almost like I wanted I don't condone the stealing. I was certainly gonna lock my money up after that. I wasn't gonna allow him to do it again.
Yeah.
But there was still unconditional love for him in some way. And who knows? Maybe he'll get back to me in a couple of years and he'll sober up and decide to pay me back the money and just realize it was wrong. And maybe he won't. And either way, it's really okay. And I just bless it and let it go. And it's all part of our journey. But
Mhm.
you're right. I don't necessarily get to choose everything that happens to me, but I get to choose how to react to it. I get to choose if I'm going to let myself sit in resentment, to be a victim to it, or if I'm going to just transcend it, let it go, use it as a lesson. Because really, if I truly look back, pretty much all of the really bad things that have happened to me in life, I put bad in quotes, I can look back and find blessings and gifts in all of them. And so really, they weren't bad things. They were just part of the lessons I needed to learn.
Mhm. No, that's so true. Because I can think back on the things that have happened in my life, and at the time, they seemed so, so bad, and then I look at where I am today, and I, like, laugh about it, and I'm like, that little girl, like, she shouldn't have been so upset because this really paid off for her." Yeah, no, I completely get that. So, Katie, what are you doing now? You're offering healing services now, right?
I am, yes. So I work primarily with holistic, often overwhelmed moms
Mhm.
who have kids that are or have challenges. So those challenges may be focus challenges, anxiety challenges. And when I'm so a lot of times parents will come to me because of the challenge with the kids. And sometimes I will work with the kids, sometimes I will work with the parents actually, and sometimes I'll work with both.
Mhm.
And so I am doing the healing work to support those moms who are looking for alternatives rather than putting their kids on meds, for example, who
Yeah.
want really to get to the root of what's going on. And I'm super excited. Probably by the time this airs, I will have finished an advanced level of training to be able to do more of the brain integration work that was done on my daughter when she was 4 years old. And
Mhm.
I'm very excited to bring this brain integration work to more people because knowing how transformative it was for both of my children, I can't wait for other parents to have the same
Mhm.
blessing of watching their children flourish, the same blessing of being able to release some of the stress and anxiety about their kids by
Yeah.
watching their kids just when the brain is integrated, things are easier, learning is easier, sensory processing is easier. I've been hearing from a couple parents recently whose kids just are very sensitive with touch, like really struggle with certain clothing and stuff. And
Mhm.
if we balance the sense of touch within the body so the brain is making proper sense of the physical sensory information coming in, some of those problems can just melt away. And when the kid, and you're a parent, and so I'm sure you understand this. When your kids are doing well, like you're doing well, and when your kids are not doing well, you as the mom are going to struggle. And that,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've been there, and that is the gift I want to offer to other parents who want to see their kids thriving and are just really feeling anxious and overwhelmed because their kids are struggling.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you were sharing all this is that, yeah, as a mom, if my kids are out of whack and they're struggling, then I'm struggling too. Because if they're crying and they're having tantrums or they're this and that, then yeah, when they're imbalanced, so am I. So I totally get that. Do you only do it in person?
So I do a lot of distance work actually as
Okay.
well. So currently I'm working primarily at a distance with clients.
Mhm.
I plan to start shifting and doing some more in-person stuff. And I'm wanting to figure out some of the stuff I'm going to do in person. Also, I'm hoping to build some of the brain integration work I'm going to start more in person, but I'm hoping to also find ways to do that at a distance as well.
Mhm. Okay.
Working with kids over Zoom is a fun challenge, not
Yeah.
always the easiest thing to do. I enjoy the challenge.
Energy can be received anywhere. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Is there anything we missed that you want to share?
If anyone is interested in reaching out and learning more about what I do, my website is unleashyourhigherself.com. So unleashyourhigherself.com. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram, but also the website. And I'm open to speaking to any mom out there who's struggling herself as a mom or struggling with her kids. I'd be happy to speak to those parents and see if there's some way that I can support them or if there's a referral that I can make that would just something else that would be more supportive as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.